I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the OB audit trail, but for those of you who are not, it is a computerized labor and delivery record that consists of entries made by the labor and delivery nurses. The doctors don't make any entries onto this audit trail. Carol's going to speak more extensively about it, but what we have found is that it's crucial in establishing liability in our obstetrics cases. Today, we're going to illustrate the importance of the audit trail in an obstetrics case against a physician and the labor and delivery nurses. We picked this case because it demonstrates how the audit trail can be used to prove culpability and uncover intentional misdeeds such as the alteration of medical records. This negligence occurred at a Midwestern community hospital. The mom presented to the hospital at about 9:30 p.m. in labor. The baby was born about 4 hours later by emergency C-section. The labor was managed primarily by 3 OB nurses who were working the evening shift, which was roughly 6:30 p.m. to 7 a.m., and the on-call physician was at home. At birth, it was clear that the baby had suffered a profound lack of oxygen and needed to be transferred to a hospital where there was a higher level of care available to meet her needs. Unfortunately, she has gone on to suffer all the typical consequences of perinatal asphyxia, including mental retardation, cerebral palsy, seizure, and blindness. We get the medical records from the community hospital where the baby was born, and the records indicated that the nurses promptly notified the doctor of some of the troubling aspects of the labor and that he just failed to come to the hospital on time. At the same time that we ordered the delivery records, we ordered the records from the hospital where the baby was transferred. When these records were reviewed, it became quite obvious that they differed in significant ways than the delivery room records.
We walked through with the witness the differences between the record, highlighted the additions that had been made, and confronted her about that.
You're aware that there were some entries into Brandy Jordan's chart that were not made at or about the time that those events occurred, right?
Yes.
And those were added by you at some later point in time, is that correct?
During my shift that very night.
And so in the latter part of the shift, the nurses knew that a very depressed baby had been born, and also that there had been no communication, truthfully, between them and the doctor. What was added here was remarks. Dr. Bradley phoned at home and basically saying that the baby's fetal monitoring wasn't looking good, that they had given the baby oxygen, that the patient was complaining of unusual pain, and that Dr. Bradley said, basically, I'm not coming in. None of which was in the original record.
You will see that actually the 2 entries that you just reviewed with regard to your findings leading up to communicating with Dr. Bradley and the phone call to Dr. Bradley are not on the records that went with the baby, correct?
Correct.
That tells us that you added those sections at some point in time after the baby had left, right?
I finished my charting at the end of my shift.
Note, she keeps saying over and over again, it's okay to do at the end, before the end of your shift. She did it before the end of her shift, again and again. She's committed to that. This is pretty clear. The entry looks like it was made at 21:43, but instead it was actually made at 5:55, long after the baby had been taken to the other hospital, but still during her shift. And a fetal heart tone of 100 beats per minute baseline, that's too low, that's abnormal. So that was unfortunate, so they wanted to get rid of that, so they deleted that. What we learned from the record, the audit trail, was that actually it wasn't just the one nurse, it was all 3 of the nurses, because it gives you the names of the nurses and the times that the entries were being made, all sitting there making additions and deletions to the record until about 10 o'clock in the morning, when their shift was actually over at 7 o'clock.
Just to refresh your recollection,
What we were doing was we were going through the two different copies of the chart that had been prepared. One which went with the baby when the baby was transferred from Bixby, and the other on which some additional entries had been made by you, you said at or about the time you completed your shift. Does it appear that you, Nurse Keene, Nurse Beyer, and Nurse Brown made all of those entries at 5 a.m., 6:52 a.m., 7:11 a.m., and 9:33 a.m.?
Yes, except for the last one, it's 9:31, not 9:33.
Thank you very much for that clarification. In any event, all of those were made well after the baby had been delivered and even left the hospital.
So this case highlights the importance of obtaining audit trail type information in establishing not only that the nurses were liars and had covered up, but also that it made a significant difference in terms of the culpability of the nurses vis-a-vis the doctor. Thank you very much.